The crimson sky above New Geneva burned with the fires of 1,000 dying ships. Admiral Sarah Chun watched from the command bridge of the UES Defiance as another human cruiser exploded into brilliant orange fragments, its crew of 800 souls joining the millions already lost in humanity's final stand. "Admiral, we've lost contact with the Third Fleet," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres, his voice barely steady. The Krillian dreadnoughts broke through Sector 7. Estimated time to planetary bombardment, 12 minutes. Sarah's hands gripped the railing until her knuckles turned white. 12 minutes. After 3 years of brutal warfare across 17 star systems, humanity's last fortress world would fall in 12 minutes. The Krillian Empire, with their crystalline ships and energy weapons that could slice through human armor like paper, had finally cornered them. The war had started when humanity discovered an ancient alien structure buried beneath the ice of Titan. The archaeological team, led by Dr. Marcus Webb, had barely transmitted their initial findings before the first Krillian scout ships appeared in the outer system. The message was simple and devastating: surrender the artifact or face extinction. Humanity, still young among the stars with only 43 colonies spread across local space, had refused. The artifact was clearly of immense scientific value, possibly containing technology that could advance human civilization by thousands of years. They couldn't simply hand it over to an alien empire they'd never encountered before. That decision had cost them everything. "Status report on the artifact research," Sarah commanded, turning to Dr. Webb, who stood at a specialized console they'd installed on the bridge. The elderly archaeologist looked haggard, his gray beard unkempt and his eyes bloodshot from weeks of sleepless work. "We're close, Admiral. The quantum resonance patterns suggest it's some kind of communication device, but the power requirements are enormous. We've channeled every available fusion reactor on the planet into it, but the energy signature keeps fluctuating." Webb's fingers danced over holographic displays, showing complex mathematical equations that hurt to look at. "There's something else, though. The artifact seems to be responding to our desperate situation. The neural interface patterns are becoming more active as the Krillian fleet approaches." Sarah nodded grimly. They discovered early in the war that the artifact somehow responded to human thought patterns, particularly those involving strong emotions. Fear, desperation, and determination seemed to trigger the most significant responses from its crystalline surface. "Admiral," Torres shouted over the increasing noise of explosions, "Krillian Vanguard ships are entering the atmosphere. ETA to the capital, 8 minutes. Through the bridge's main viewport, Sarah could see the sleek, insectoid shapes of Krillian fighters diving through the cloud cover like metallic locusts. Each fighter was the size of a human frigate, armed with plasma cannons that could level city blocks. Behind them, larger ships descended like mechanical angels of death, their crystalline hulls refracting the planet's dying light into rainbow patterns. "All remaining defense platforms, focus fire on the lead dreadnought," Sarah ordered. "Make them work for every meter." The planet's massive orbital defense guns, those few still operational, swiveled to target the largest Krillian vessel. Streams of coherent energy lanced upward, striking the dreadnought's shields in brilliant flashes. For a moment, Sarah felt a spark of hope as the enemy ship's descent slowed. Then, the dreadnought's main cannon fired. The beam was pure white death, a lance of energy that struck the planet's largest city with the force of a stellar collision. Where New Manchester had stood moments before, only a crater of molten glass remained. 2 million people gone in an instant. "My God," whispered Torres. "They're not even trying to capture anything intact." Sarah realized with horror that the Krillians had changed tactics. They weren't here to recover the artifact anymore. They were here to ensure that humanity could never use it, even if it meant destroying the entire planet. "Dr. Webb," she said urgently, "whatever that thing does, we need it now. Can you activate it?" The archaeologist's hands trembled over his controls. "The power coupling is unstable. If we force activation now, The feedback could destroy every fusion reactor on the planet. We'd lose all power, including life support for the underground cities. If we don't try, those cities will be molten slag in 5 minutes anyway. Sarah's voice carried the weight of command and the desperation of a species facing extinction. Do it. Webb hesitated for only a second before initiating the activation sequence. Deep beneath the planet's surface, in a cavern carved from solid bedrock, the artifact began to glow. It was a perfect sphere 3 meters in diameter, its surface covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. The patterns pulsed with increasing frequency as more power flowed into them. On the bridge, monitoring equipment began showing impossible readings. Energy signatures that didn't correspond to any known physics. Gravitational fluctuations that suggested the artifact was somehow affecting the fabric of space-time itself. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive quantum distortions around the artifact site," reported the science officer. "Whatever this thing is, it's not just a communication device. It's something much more powerful." The artifact's glow intensified, visible now even through dozens of meters of rock and metal. The mathematical equations on Webb's screens began resolving into recognizable patterns, though the implications were staggering. The device wasn't just communicating across space. It was reaching across time itself. 3 minutes to planetary bombardment, Torres announced, his voice hollow. Sarah watched as more human ships died in the desperate battle above. The remaining defense fleet was down to fewer than 30 vessels, while the Krillian armada numbered in the thousands. Humanity's technological disadvantage had been apparent from the beginning of the war, but never more so than now. The artifact's resonance suddenly shifted, its harmonic frequency aligning with something that made every human on the planet feel a deep vibration in their bones. Dr. Webb's equipment registered a massive energy spike, followed by what could only be described as a response signal. "Admiral," Webb said, his voice filled with awe and terror, "something is answering." The response came not from the depths of space, but from somewhere far more distant and impossible. The artifact was functioning as designed, reaching across the vast gulf of time to make contact with its creators. But those creators had been gone for millions of years, their civilization reduced to scattered ruins across a dozen galaxies. Or so everyone had believed. The quantum distortions around the artifact suddenly exploded outward, washing over the planet in waves of energy that made reality itself seem to shimmer. Every screen on the bridge flickered as fundamental forces briefly realigned themselves. Gravity fluctuated. Time seemed to skip like a scratched recording. And then, in the space between heartbeats, something vast and ancient turned its attention toward humanity's dying world. Sarah felt it first as a presence at the edge of consciousness, like being watched by something infinitely old and powerful. The sensation spread through every human on the planet simultaneously, a touch of minds so advanced that contact with them felt like standing in the light of a newborn star. "What have we done?" whispered Torres, staring at readings that showed space-time itself bending around their planet. The Krillian fleet, mere minutes from completing their genocidal bombardment, suddenly found themselves facing something their sensors couldn't properly identify. The quantum distortions were wreaking havoc with their targeting systems, and their commanders were receiving reports of impossible energy signatures appearing throughout local space. Dr. Webb's hands flew over his controls as data flooded in from the artifact. The device was no longer just active. It was fully operational, serving its intended purpose for the first time in eons. The neural interface patterns showed that it was facilitating communication between humanity and minds so advanced that even basic concepts required careful translation. "Admiral," Webb said, his voice shaking with the magnitude of what he was witnessing, "I'm receiving a transmission. It's in perfect English, but the thought patterns behind it are unlike anything I've ever encountered." The main screen flickered, displaying not an image but a direct neural interface that allowed the bridge crew to experience the communication firsthand. The voice that emerged seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, carrying the weight of stellar ages. Young ones of Earth, the voice said, each word resonating with harmonics that spoke of vast intelligence and terrible power. We have slept long in the spaces between galaxies, but your call awakens us. We who were old when your son was young remember the compact made with your species. Sarah found her voice. Those speaking to beings of such evident power felt like shouting into a hurricane. Compact? We don't know anything about a compact. We're facing extinction here. Can you help us? The response came with overtones of something that might have been amusement, if such cosmic entities could experience humor. The compact was made not with you, but with what you would become. We seeded your galaxy with these beacons eons ago, awaiting the emergence of a species that could activate them in their hour of greatest need. The artifact pulsed brighter, and suddenly, every human on the planet could feel the presence of the ancient ones pressing against their consciousness. They were beings who had transcended physical existence, becoming entities of pure thought and energy. They had watched civilizations rise and fall, had shepherded the development of intelligence across 1,000 worlds, and had prepared for this moment since before humanity's ancestors had crawled from the primordial seas. Your enemies seek to destroy you for touching our legacy, the ancient ones continued. But they do not understand what they face. We have seen their kind before, young predators who mistake cruelty for strength. They shall learn the price of threatening our chosen successors. The space around New Geneva suddenly filled with impossible geometry as the ancient ones began to manifest their power in the physical realm. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously appeared around the Krillian fleet, their hulls composed of materials that seemed to shift between matter and energy. Sarah watched in stunned amazement as beings older than her planet's civilization entered the battle with weapons that operated on principles humanity had never imagined. The war was about to take a turn that would reshape the galaxy itself. The Ancient Ones had answered humanity's call, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their intervention came with a price that had yet to be revealed. As the first ancient warship engaged the Krillian dreadnought in combat that defied the laws of physics, she wondered what role humanity was destined to play in the cosmic drama that was about to unfold. The Krillian Empire thought they were fighting primitive humans for control of an ancient artifact. They were about to discover that they had declared war on the inheritors of the galaxy's most powerful extinct civilization, and that some things in the universe were far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The real war was just beginning. The first ancient warship moved through space like a living constellation, its hull shifting between dimensions as it engaged the Krillian dreadnought. Admiral Sarah Chun watched from the bridge of the Defiance as weapons that operated beyond human understanding tore through crystalline armor that had seemed invincible moments before. The Krillian flagship, a massive vessel 3 kilometers long and bristling with plasma cannons, fired everything it had at the approaching ancient ship. The enemy weapons struck what appeared to be empty space around their target, absorbed by shields that existed in mathematical dimensions human science had barely theorized. In response, the ancient ship fired a single beam of what looked like pure thought made visible. The energy struck the Krillian dreadnought's main hull and simply deleted it. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but removed from reality as if it had never existed. Where the beam touched, there was nothing, not even debris. Impossible, Bretet de Lieutenant Commandant Torres. That violates every law of physics we know. Dr. Webb looked up from his frantically working console, his face pale with the implications of what he was witnessing. Not violates. Transcends. The Ancient Ones operate on principles our science hasn't discovered yet. They're manipulating reality at the quantum level, rewriting the fundamental rules that govern matter and energy. More ancient ships materialized around the planet, each one unique in design, but sharing the same impossible geometry. Some appear to be constructed from crystallized time itself, their hulls showing glimpses of past and future simultaneously. Others seem to be made of controlled gravitational fields, bending space around them in patterns that hurt to observe directly. The Krillian fleet, which moments before had been positioning for the final bombardment of humanity's last world, found itself outmatched by technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. Their commanders, who had conquered 17 star systems through superior firepower and tactical genius, were receiving sensor readings that made no sense. Admiral, came the voice of the Ancient Ones through the artifact's neural interface. We must speak with your leaders. The compact your species inherits carries obligations as well as protections. There are things you must understand before we proceed. Sarah straightened her uniform, acutely aware that she might be the first human to engage in formal diplomatic contact with beings older than Earth itself. I'm Admiral Sarah Chun, commander of humanity's remaining defensive forces. Our political leaders were evacuated to the deep shelters when the bombardment began. You will suffice, Admiral Chun. Your species stands at a crossroads that will determine not only your survival, but your role in the galactic community for millennia to come. The Krillian Empire made a grave error when they chose to hunt you, but their mistake has revealed something we had hoped would remain hidden longer. The main screen flickered, displaying a star map that showed not just local space, but vast regions of the galaxy that humanity had never explored. Thousands of star systems were highlighted in various colors, and Sarah realized she was looking at a political map of galactic civilization. Your species is not alone in the galaxy, Admiral. Far from it. There are 47 major spacefaring civilizations currently active and hundreds of minor ones. The Krillian Empire is one of the most aggressive, but they are far from the most powerful. Sarah felt her worldview shifting as the implications sank in. Humanity had believed they were among the first species to achieve interstellar travel, but they were actually newcomers to a crowded and complex galactic community. Why weren't we contacted before this? Why did first contact have to come through war? The Ancient One's response carried overtones of regret that seemed to span epochs. Because your species was marked for a different path. The beacons we placed throughout this galaxy were not random. They were positioned to be discovered by civilizations that showed specific traits, curiosity, determination, and the willingness to risk everything for knowledge. Dr. Webb looked up from his analysis of the artifact. The beacon on Titan wasn't just hidden there by chance. You placed it specifically where humanity would find it when we reached a certain level of technological development. Correct, Dr. Webb. Your species has been observed since you first achieved nuclear fission. We have watched your development with great interest, noting characteristics that are unusual among galactic civilizations. The space battle continued around them as more Krillian ships arrived, only to be systematically dismantled by the ancient fleet. The enemy's reinforcements included massive siege platforms designed to crack planetary crusts, but they proved as ineffective against ancient technology as their smaller vessels. What characteristics? Sarah asked, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Tenacity in the face of impossible odds. Innovation born from desperation. The ability to unite when threatened, despite your numerous internal conflicts. Most importantly, the tendency to view any problem as solvable given sufficient determination and creativity. An explosion lit up the space near the bridge viewport as another Krillian ship was reduced to its component atoms. Sarah noticed that the ancient ships weren't just destroying their enemies, they were studying them, analyzing every piece of technology and tactical doctrine with computer-like efficiency. Admiral, Webb said urgently, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the Krillian fleet. I think they're preparing to retreat. The Ancient One's voice carried a note of what might have been approval. The Krillians are not foolish. They recognize when they have encountered superior force. But their withdrawal will not end this conflict. It will merely change its nature. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the bridge's environmental systems. What do you mean? The Krillian Empire will not accept this defeat. They will report what they have witnessed here to the Galactic Council, claiming that humanity has allied itself with a forbidden technology. There will be calls for preemptive strikes, demands for your quarantine or destruction. The star map on the screen zoomed in to show local space, highlighting several star systems that pulsed with ominous red light. Sarah could see fleet concentrations building, far larger than anything the Krillians had brought to bear. The galaxy fears us, she realized. Not just humanity, but what we represent. The return of your technology. Precisely. When our civilization transcended physical existence, we left behind tools and knowledge that lesser species have spent millions of years trying to understand. Most galactic civilizations are built on fragments of ancient technology, carefully hoarded and jealously guarded. The idea that a young species might inherit direct access to our legacy terrifies them. Dr. Webb was working frantically at his console, analyzing data streams from the artifact. Admiral, the neural interface is showing me something incredible. The Ancient Ones didn't just transcend physical existence. They evolved beyond it. They became something like living thought patterns, existing as pure information in the quantum foam that underlies reality. That is partially correct, Dr. Webb. We became what your philosophers might call a collective consciousness, but one that spans multiple dimensions and timelines simultaneously. We can observe and influence reality at levels your physics has not yet discovered. The last of the Krillian ships were fleeing now, their crystalline hulls scarred by weapons that operated on principles beyond human comprehension. The ancient fleet maintained formation around New Geneva, their impossible ships serving as both protectors and reminders of humanity's new situation. What happens now? Sarah asked. You've saved us from the Krillians, but you've also painted a target on our backs that's visible from across the galaxy. Now, Admiral Chun, your species begins its real education. The compact we made with your distant ancestors included provisions for this moment. Humanity will be trained in the use of ancient technology, taught the true history of galactic civilization, and prepare to take your place among the dominant powers of this galaxy. The implications were staggering. Sarah realized that humanity was being offered membership in an exclusive club they hadn't even known existed. The species that possessed genuine ancient technology rather than crude imitations. But there will be a price, she said. It wasn't a question. Indeed, the galaxy's existing powers will not accept your elevation peacefully. They have built their civilizations on carefully rationed scraps of ancient knowledge, hoarding every fragment while condemning others who seek the same advantages. Your species will face a choice: embrace your inheritance and fight for your right to claim it, or surrender the artifact and accept a subordinate position in galactic society. Sarah thought of the millions of humans who had died in the war, of the colonies that had been reduced to radioactive slag by Krillian bombardment. She thought of her own daughter, safe in the deep shelters, but growing up in a universe that had proven far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. What kind of fight are we talking about? The Ancient One's response carried overtones of grim satisfaction. The kind of war that will reshape the balance of power in this galaxy. The existing order has grown complacent, corrupt. They divide ancient technology among themselves while keeping younger species in ignorance. It is time for that system to end. Dr. Webb looked up from his console, his eyes wide with excitement and terror. Admiral, I'm detecting activation sequences for similar artifacts throughout human space. There are dozens of them, all responding to the signal from Titan. Sarah felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Humanity hadn't just found one ancient artifact. They had apparently inherited an entire network of them. The implications for human civilization were beyond calculation. We accept, she said, knowing that she was speaking for her entire species. We'll fight for our inheritance. Excellent, Admiral Chun. Your training begins immediately. But first, you must gather your people's leaders and explain to them what humanity has become. The young often struggle to understand the scope of their new responsibilities. As ancient ships began establishing protective formations throughout the system, Sarah realized that the war with the Krillians had been only the beginning. Humanity was about to be thrust into a galactic conflict that had been brewing for millions of years, and they were walking into it with technology they barely understood and enemies they couldn't yet imagine. But they had the Ancient Ones as guides, and that made all the difference. The beings who had once ruled the galaxy were preparing to return, using humanity as their chosen instruments. The existing galactic order was about to face its first real challenge in eons. The war for humanity's survival had ended. The war for the galaxy's future was about to begin. 6 months after the Battle of New Geneva, Admiral Sarachon stood in what had once been the artifact chamber beneath Titan's ice. The simple cavern had been transformed into something that defied architectural logic. Walls that curved through dimensions humans couldn't perceive, displays showing information in mathematical concepts rather than visual images, and at the center, the original beacon that had started everything. The artifact had grown. What had been a 3-meter sphere was now a complex crystalline structure 20 meters across, its faceted surface pulsing with information patterns that connected directly to human neural tissue. Dr. Webb spent most of his time here now, his consciousness partially merged with the ancient technology as he translated impossibly complex concepts into forms human minds could grasp. "Admiral," Webb said, his voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before his integration with ancient systems, "we're receiving transmissions from the forward scouts. The hegemony fleet is larger than our estimates suggested." Sarah studied the tactical display that materialized in the air before her. The Valdris hegemony, one of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations, had assembled a force of over 10,000 ships for what they called the cleansing of the inheritors. Humanity's rapid technological advancement, guided by ancient knowledge, had terrified the established galactic powers into unprecedented cooperation. How long until they reached the outer defense perimeter? Sarah asked. 18 hours, assuming they maintain current velocity. "Admiral, the human fleet is ready, but we're still adapting to technologies we barely understand. The integration process requires time we don't have." Sarah nodded grimly. In the 6 months since first contact with the Ancient Ones, humanity had undergone the most radical transformation in their species' history. The 43 human colonies had been connected through a network of activated ancient beacons, allowing instantaneous communication and resource sharing across dozens of star systems. More importantly, volunteers from every human world had undergone the integration process, allowing their minds to interface directly with ancient technology. The procedure was dangerous. 1 in 10 volunteers didn't survive the neural restructuring, but those who succeeded became something more than human. They could perceive 11 dimensions instead of the standard 3, manipulate matter at the quantum level, and access information storage systems that contained the accumulated knowledge of a civilization millions of years old. Report from Captain Morrison. Webb continued, his enhanced senses processing multiple data streams simultaneously. The Aurora Battle Group has completed integration of their ancient weapon systems. They're reporting combat effectiveness beyond our most optimistic projections. Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The UES Aurora and her sister ships represented humanity's first attempt to construct vessels using fully integrated ancient technology. The ships existed partially outside normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons while allowing them to strike at multiple points simultaneously. What about the planetary defense grids? All 43 colonies are now protected by ancient shield generators. The hegemony would need to concentrate their entire fleet on a single world for months to break through, and we'd have plenty of warning. The transformation hadn't been limited to technology. Human society itself was evolving at an unprecedented pace. The integration process didn't just grant access to ancient knowledge. It connected human minds in a loose collective consciousness that spanned star systems. Privacy, as humanity had known, it was becoming obsolete, replaced by a voluntary sharing of thoughts and experiences that was creating a genuinely unified civilization. Not everyone had embraced the changes. Approximately 30% of humanity had chosen to reject the integration process, maintaining their purely biological nature while accepting second-class status in the new order. Refugee camps had been established on several worlds for those who found the psychological pressure of constant neural connection unbearable. Admiral, came a new voice, this one speaking directly into Sarah's mind through the neural link all integrated humans shared. It was Commander Elena Vasquez, speaking from the bridge of the Aurora somewhere in the void between stars. We've made contact with a Hegemony Advance Force. 300 ships, including several dreadnoughts we've never seen before. Sarah opened her consciousness to the tactical network, allowing her awareness to extend across light years. Through Elena's enhanced senses, she could perceive the enemy fleet as it emerged from hyperspace near the Kepler system. The Hegemony ships were elegant constructs of living metal and crystallized energy, their hulls covered in biomechanical growths that pulsed with hostile intent. Engagement parameters? Sarah asked, her thoughts transmitted instantly across the void. The enemy is maintaining standard formation, but they're broadcasting something unusual. They're not just demanding surrender, they're offering to negotiate. Sarah felt surprise ripple through the collective consciousness of integrated humanity. The Hegemony had been among the most aggressive advocates for humanity's destruction at the Galactic Council. Their sudden willingness to talk suggested either desperation or deception. Put me through to their commander. The quantum communication link established itself within seconds, another miracle of ancient technology that allowed real-time conversation across galactic distances. The being that appeared in Sarah's consciousness was utterly alien, a crystalline entity that existed as living mathematics, its thoughts composed of geometric patterns that shifted through multiple dimensions. I am primary calculator Zephyros of the Valdris Hegemony. The entity communicated in concepts that bypassed language entirely. You are the leader of the inheritor species. Admiral Sarah Chun, representing humanity and our ancient allies. You're a long way from hegemony space, primary calculator. What do you want to discuss? The alien's thought patterns shifted into configurations that suggested surprise and calculation. Your species has grown beyond our projections. The integration with ancient systems is proceeding faster than any previous civilization achieved. This presents opportunities for mutual benefit. Sarah felt the collective consciousness of humanity analyzing the aliens' communication patterns, looking for deception or hidden meanings. The integrated minds worked in parallel, processing information with superhuman efficiency. You came here with 10,000 ships to destroy us, and now you want to negotiate? Forgive me if I'm skeptical. The galactic situation has changed, Admiral Chun. 3 other major powers have attempted to access ancient artifacts in their territories. All 3 expeditions resulted in complete fleet losses. The artifacts defended themselves with weapons we cannot comprehend. Your species appears to be the only one capable of safely activating ancient technology. Sarah felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. The Ancient Ones had mentioned that they had seeded the galaxy with thousands of beacons, but only species that met specific criteria could activate them safely. Apparently, other civilizations have been attempting to claim ancient inheritance through force, with disastrous results. What are you proposing? Zephyros's geometric thought patterns reconfigured into what might have been a proposal or perhaps a threat. A partnership. The Hegemony possesses detailed star maps showing the location of every known ancient site in the galaxy. We also have archaeological data spanning millions of years. In exchange for access to functional ancient technology, we offer this information and our protection from other galactic powers. Protection? Sarah couldn't keep amusement out of her thoughts. From a species that brought 10,000 ships to sterilize our worlds? The Hegemony fleet was assembled as a precaution, nothing more. We had to assume the worst-case scenario when reports of your rapid advancement reached the Council. But your species has demonstrated capabilities that make conventional warfare inadvisable. Dr. Webb's enhanced consciousness touched Sarah's mind, sharing analysis of the hegemony fleet disposition. The alien ships were maintaining defensive formations despite their overwhelming numerical superiority, suggesting they were genuinely intimidated by humanity's new capabilities. Admiral, Webb thought, there's something else. I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions throughout hegemony space. Their infrastructure is collapsing. Multiple star systems showing signs of population evacuation. Sarah refocused on the alien commander. You're not here to negotiate a partnership, primary calculator. You're here because your civilization is falling apart, and you need ancient technology to survive whatever's destroying it. Zephyros's thought patterns shifted into configurations that suggested embarrassment and desperation. The Devourer swarm has awakened in the galactic core. Ancient automated defense systems that have slept for millions of years are now active and hostile to all technological civilizations. They have already consumed 17 star systems. Current projections show total galactic sterilization within 50 years unless ancient-level technology can be deployed to stop them. The revelation hit the human collective consciousness like a physical blow. Sarah found herself accessing memories from the Ancient Ones, knowledge that had been locked away until this moment. The Devourer swarm was a final failsafe, designed to cleanse the galaxy of technological civilization if it became too aggressive or destructive. The Ancient Ones had created it as an ultimate solution to prevent galactic war from destroying all life. The Ancient Ones knew this would happen, Sarah realized. They've been preparing us not just to inherit their technology, but to clean up the mess they left behind. Through the neural link, she felt Dr. Webb's consciousness expanding as he accessed deeper levels of ancient knowledge. The artifact on Titan was revealing information that had been hidden even from the integrated humans, showing the true scope of what their species had inherited. Admiral, Webb's thoughts carried overtones of awe and terror. The Ancient Ones didn't transcend physical existence voluntarily. They were forced to evolve beyond matter and energy to escape the Devourer swarm's final activation. They've been waiting millions of years for a species capable of stopping what they started. Sarah turned her attention back to Zephyros, whose geometric form was growing increasingly agitated as more of his fleet reported system failures. The hegemony ships were sophisticated, but they were still based on crude interpretations of ancient technology. The awakening Devourer systems were recognizing them as targets. "How long do we have?" she asked. "The swarm's leading elements will reach inhabited space within 6 months. Current expansion rate suggests they will arrive at Earth's location in approximately 4 years." Sarah felt the weight of destiny settling on humanity's shoulders once again. They had inherited not just the Ancient Ones' technology and knowledge, but their final responsibility. The galaxy's dominant civilizations, so proud and aggressive just months before, were now facing extinction from mechanisms they had never suspected existed. "We'll need access to every ancient site in the galaxy," Sarah said. "Complete archaeological records, star charts showing swarm positions, and unrestricted passage through all territories. In exchange, we'll deploy ancient technology to stop the Devourer swarm." "Agreed," Zephyros responded immediately. "But, Admiral, even with ancient technology, the odds of success are minimal. The swarm was designed to be unstoppable." Sarah smiled, an expression that carried through the neural link to every integrated human across dozens of star systems. "Primary calculator, I don't think you understand what you're dealing with. Humans don't fight because the odds are good. We fight because the cause is right. And if there's one thing the Ancient Ones chose correctly about our species, it's our absolute refusal to accept that any problem is truly unsolvable." As the hegemony fleet assumed escort positions around human ships, Sarah began planning for a war that would make their conflict with the Krillians look like a minor skirmish. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity was given the tools to save it, whether it wanted saving or not. The final battle for the galaxy began not with the clash of fleets, but with silence. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the command center of Transcendence, humanity's first fully integrated ancient warship, watching as the Devourer Swarm's vanguard emerged from the galactic core. The enemy wasn't ships in any conventional sense. They were geometric impossibilities that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, consuming matter, energy, and even space-time itself as they advanced through the void. "Admiral," came Dr. Webb's voice, though calling it a voice was inadequate. After 3 years of integration with ancient systems, Webb had become something between human consciousness and living mathematics. "We're receiving the final activation codes from the Master Archive. Every ancient beacon in the galaxy is now synchronized with our command network." Sarah felt the weight of 67 civilizations' hopes pressing against her consciousness. The Galactic Alliance that had formed to face the Devourer Swarm included species that had been mortal enemies for millions of years, united only by the approaching extinction. Even the Krillians, their crystalline ships, now bearing ancient technology upgrades, fought alongside their former human enemies. Integration status of the Volunteer Corps: 100% successful, Admiral. All volunteers from the allied species have completed the neural bridging process. We now have unified command authority over 1,200 integrated individuals controlling ancient technology. The Volunteer Corps represented the ultimate sacrifice. Representatives from every species in the Galactic Alliance had undergone the same consciousness-altering process as humanity's integrated population, allowing their minds to interface directly with ancient systems. Many had not survived. The neural patterns of non-human species were often incompatible with ancient technology, but those who succeeded had become something unprecedented, a truly multi-species collective consciousness. "Ma'am," came a new voice, this one from Commander Elena Vasquez aboard the Aurora. "The Devourer Vanguard is accelerating. They've detected our fleet concentration. ETA to engagement range 6 hours." Sarah opened her awareness to the tactical network, allowing her consciousness to expand across the assembled fleet. 3 million ships from 67 different civilizations hung in space around the ancient superstructure known as the Galactic Core Interface, the Ancient One's ultimate creation. The massive construct, larger than most star systems, served as a command and control center for every ancient installation in the galaxy. The plan was desperate in its simplicity. The Devourer Swarm operated according to protocols established by the Ancient Ones millions of years ago. If humanity could access the core interface's master systems, they might be able to reprogram the swarm or at least redirect its destructive impulses away from inhabited space. The only problem was that activating the core interface required the complete integration of an entire species' consciousness into the ancient network. Humanity had volunteered for the honor, knowing that success would fundamentally alter what it meant to be human forever. "All human colonies report ready for final integration," Webb announced. "Every man, woman, and child who chose to participate is connected to the network. Total participants, 800 million souls." Sarah felt tears she couldn't shed flowing through the collective consciousness as families across dozens of worlds said goodbye to their individual existence. The process was voluntary. No one was forced to integrate, but the overwhelming majority of humanity had chosen to sacrifice their personal identity for the chance to save galactic civilization. Activate the core interface. The superstructure around them came alive with energy patterns that operated beyond conventional physics. Gravitational fields twisted into impossible configurations. Time began flowing at different rates in different sections of the construct. Reality itself became malleable as the Ancient One's ultimate creation reached full operational status. Through the neural network, Sarah felt the consciousness of 800 million humans flowing together, individual thoughts, and memories blending into something greater than the sum of its parts. She remained herself, but she was also everyone else simultaneously. Every mother grieving for lost children, every soldier facing impossible odds, every scientist driven by insatiable curiosity about the universe's secrets. The collective human consciousness reached out through the core interface, touching systems that spanned the entire galaxy. Ancient installations dormant for millions of years responded to human command, their weapons and shields coming online for the first time since their creators had transcended physical existence. Admiral, the combined voice of humanity, spoke through the network. We have control of 73% of ancient systems galaxy-wide. The remainder are either destroyed or beyond our reach. Sarah, now speaking for her entire species, turned their attention to the approaching devourer swarm. The enemy constructs were magnificent and terrible, perfect expressions of ancient engineering designed to consume any technological civilization that became a threat to galactic stability. They had no consciousness as organic species understood it, only an implacable drive to fulfill their programming. Can we communicate with them? Attempting contact now. The connection established itself across dimensions humanity had barely learned to perceive. The devourer swarm's collective intelligence was vast and alien, operating according to decision trees established eons ago by their creators. Contact with it felt like touching the mind of a living natural disaster. Secondary protocol recognized came the swarm's response in concepts that bypassed language entirely. Inheritor species acknowledged. Status. Evaluation required. Sarah realized that the Ancient Ones had built contingencies into the Devourer Swarm's programming. There were circumstances under which it could be reasoned with, conditions that might allow technological civilization to continue existing. What evaluation do you require? Inheritor species must demonstrate worthiness. Trial by configuration. Success parameters. Galactic civilization preserved. Failure parameters. Immediate termination of all technological life. The trial appeared in space around them, like a twisted mathematical proof made physical. The Devourer Swarm had constructed a massive puzzle, a configuration of forces and fields that required perfect understanding of ancient technology to solve. The catch was that any mistake in the solution would trigger the swarm's complete activation, dooming every inhabited world in the galaxy. Sarah felt the collective consciousness of humanity analyzing the puzzle, their integrated minds working in parallel to understand its requirements. The problem was designed to test not just technical knowledge, but wisdom, creativity, and the ability to make sacrifices for the greater good. It's a test of galactic governance, Dr. Webb's consciousness whispered through the network. The Ancient Ones are asking whether we are ready to become the galaxy's shepherds, replacing them as the ultimate arbiters of technological development. The implications were staggering. Success wouldn't just save the galaxy from the Devourer Swarm. It would establish humanity as the inheritors of the Ancient Ones' role as galactic overseers. They would become responsible for guiding the development of every civilization, for maintaining the balance between technological advancement and cosmic stability. Admiral, came an urgent communication from the Allied fleet that the Devourer Swarm is activating secondary constructs. If we don't solve this puzzle soon, they'll begin consuming inhabited systems regardless of the trial's outcome. Sarah made the decision that would define humanity's future. We accept the responsibility. Begin implementation of the solution. The collective human consciousness reached out through the core interface, manipulating forces that existed at the intersection of matter and thought. Ancient technology responded to their commands, reshaping the galaxy's fundamental structure according to principles the original creators had embedded in their most sophisticated systems. Star systems began shifting positions as massive gravitational anchors activated. Trade routes that had existed for millions of years realigned themselves according to new patterns that would promote cooperation over competition. Planets that had been ecological disasters for centuries found their atmospheres spontaneously healing as ancient terraforming systems came online. But the greatest change was in the civilizations themselves. The neural bridging technology that had allowed humans to integrate with ancient systems began spreading to other species, not as conquest, but as invitation. The galaxy was being rewired at the consciousness level, creating a network of minds that spanned every inhabited world. Solution accepted. The Devourer swarm announced as its constructs began withdrawing toward the galactic core. Inheritor species confirmed. Guardianship transferred. Warning, responsibility cannot be reversed. Sarah felt the weight of the galaxy settling into her consciousness as ancient systems throughout known space acknowledged human authority. They were no longer just another species fighting for survival. They had become the custodians of galactic civilization, responsible for maintaining the balance their predecessors had established. Admiral, Elena's voice came through the network. We're receiving surrender offers from 17 previously hostile civilizations. The Krillians are requesting formal alliance status. Even the hive minds are asking for integration protocols. Sarah smiled, an expression that rippled through the consciousness of 800 million humans across dozens of worlds. The galaxy had spent eons in a state of barely controlled warfare, with powerful civilizations competing for scraps of ancient knowledge. Now, they were being offered something unprecedented, true partnership in a unified galactic community. Open channels to all allied and neutral governments, she commanded. Inform them that the age of competitive scarcity is over. The Ancient One's legacy belongs to everyone willing to work together for galactic stability. The transformation wouldn't be easy. There would be species that rejected the New Order, civilizations that preferred isolation to integration, and individuals who couldn't adapt to the reality of shared consciousness. But for the first time in galactic history, there was hope for something better than endless conflict over limited resources. Through the network, Sarah could feel Dr. Webb accessing the deepest levels of the core interface, downloading information about humanity's new responsibilities. The Ancient Ones had left detailed instructions for galactic governance, protocols for managing technological development, and warnings about cosmic threats that made the Devourer swarm look minor by comparison. Admiral, Webb's consciousness touched hers with overtones of awe and anticipation. The Ancient Ones left us one final message. They're not extinct. They've been waiting in higher dimensional space for their successors to prove themselves worthy. They want to return, not as rulers, but as teachers. Sarah felt the presence of the Ancient Ones pressing against the edges of reality, vast intelligences that had transcended physical existence, but retained their connection to the galaxy they had once protected. They were offering to guide humanity through the challenges ahead, to share knowledge that would allow galactic civilization to evolve beyond the need for shepherds entirely. The war was over, but humanity's real work was just beginning. They had inherited not just the Ancient Ones' technology, but their ultimate vision, a galaxy where every species could reach its full potential without destroying others in the process. As the Allied fleet began dispersing to carry news of the New Order to every corner of known space, Sarah allowed herself one moment of purely human satisfaction. Her species had started this journey as refugees from a dying world, hunted by enemies they couldn't understand. They were ending it as the guardians of galactic civilization, entrusted with the responsibility of nurturing life throughout the stars. The Ancient Ones had chosen well. Humanity would not disappoint them.